Where did the original idea of creating a Jewish homeland? Because I think a lot of people may not be aware that the state of Israel as we know it today was born in 1948. It did not exist before that. But where did this original idea of creating a Jewish homeland, which is popularly known as Zionism, where did this emanate from, and why was it conceived? You know, like when did it start?
Okay, that's kind of a tricky question because the concept of having a Jewish homeland has, you know, it goes back to biblical times.
Yes.
But when we talk about the more recent Israel that we see today, for the purpose of keeping things simple and not being in history class, I would put it like this. A lot of the countries that we know and we see today were made because of treaties, because of alliances, and that's how the maps were drawn. Okay. So basically, when the decision was, let's get back to this Israel. So Israel has always been a concept. If you are talking in terms of biblical times, as a people, and so they have a very long history as being a collective people and having their own state, which from time to time may have had some sort of ruler take over. So the idea is, how do we get back to that? How do we create an opportunity for the Jewish people to have like a safe haven land? And so this was then created by treaties. So
okay, so now before we get to the treaties, you're talking about a safe haven land, and we've gone back before the Holocaust, which is in the Second World War. So when you're talking about a safe haven, are we talking about a safe haven because there was issues that they were facing in different parts of the world that they were, and this is before the Holocaust?
Right. So the Jewish people have had many. I like going back to the biblical times because I know that probably if you didn't take a history class, you might recognize the stories that have been told and or have experienced this from the Jewish community. Yes. So we have, for example, if you live in Baltimore County, we have days off of school if you're in the public school system specifically for Jewish holidays. And many of those holidays are remembering, you know, different events that occurred in their history, right? Remembering the being freed from Egypt, remembering, you know, many of the times their lands were occupied and things of that nature, right? So there is a history over hundreds of years. So this isn't just our recent history. There's a history over thousands of years of having to deal with being occupied or moving from land to land. So with Moses, they moved. With Abraham, they moved, for those who are familiar with those biblical references. So imagine that is your history for 2,000 years, and now your people are spread out. We've learned more recently when it comes to the world wars how anti-Semitism has been a big point when it comes to these world wars. But world wars always start with smaller conflicts. So when these smaller conflicts are happening and the Jewish people are being affected by that, and there is that consistent history, now there is this let's go back home concept, right? And so now we go back to the historical concept of where the Jews once lived. Now they lived in many places. We get to this Israel decision considering that the Jews once lived there. At least that's the thinking or the reason why that area was picked, although they had other options.
Okay, and when we're talking about other options, you know, like let's talk about those other options. This was before, you know, like we're talking about where present day Israel is in what was formerly called the land that was called Palestine, which was under the Ottoman Empire. Yeah. So what other options were being considered?
So in East Africa, there's a portion of land that resides between Uganda and Kenya. So the current Uganda and Kenya, there's a section of land there that was being considered to be Israel, to be the homeland. And I would love to hear your thoughts on why you think that didn't happen, because there's the official reasons, but there are other. I mean, we can speculate. You know,
people didn't look the same.
Savages.
Okay.
Wow.
Well,
Mika, welcome to the show.
My thinking is, remember that time the world was, the British were colonizing very big parts of the world, and they were busy, you know, like signing treaties without talking to the locals, without consulting them, without, you know, like without any kind of due process. And I think the reason why, remember, East Africa, Kenya especially, was a settler colony. And this is a very interesting aspect that a lot of people don't know, the different kinds of colonialisms that were there in Africa. You notice that in a country like when you see the differences in Kenya, for example, in Tanzania, we are right next to each other, and we were both British colonies. But Kenya was a settler colony, meaning the British had come to settle in Kenya. They brought people to settle in Kenya, and their plan was to live there forever.
Right.
Yes. So the other settler colonies in Africa, Zimbabwe. Another settler colony in Africa, South Africa. And those are countries that still have South Africa still has a huge presence of white people. Zimbabwe has some remnants of white people. I think after the land conflicts in the 90s, a lot of them left. But the plan was to come and settle forever. You know, like the way white people came to the Americas, and they've settled
and
here.
Australia.
And they settled here forever.
Right.
So that was the
Forever?
plan.
I think there's a TZ guy who has cut feelings, but I don't know.
So the difference between settler colony and like the colonization that was in Tanzania they would send you know, like district commissioners, they would send officials, but they would not take they would not take families to live there. You know, and that's where you see
uninhabitable,
and that's where you see you know, like there's an influence. There's a bigger colonial influence that Kenya has, because when you think about it, the colonial project in Kenya was less than 70 years. It wasn't a very long time.
No, it wasn't.
But the impact was so big.
Yeah.
So with bringing the Jewish state to East Africa, that would have been a second colonialism. Because remember, a country that has suffered two colonialisms is South Africa. South Africa was under the British, and then there was the Boer War.
The Boer Wars.
No, the Boer War, you know, then the British left and they left the Boers, and the Boers implemented this system that's called apartheid, which, not according to me, according to Nelson Mandela. He says that, you know, like what currently Israel, at that time when he was alive, what Israel was practicing in that zone was akin to apartheid. So
it's him and many other scholars.
Yes, and many other scholars.
So you're saying Mandela and Arafat were in the same WhatsApp group?
Yes, Mandela and Arafat were in the same WhatsApp group. You know, in fact, Mandela would say we are not fully free until, you know, like Palestine is free. And I'm glad this is happening right now because it's forcing people to read history. One area that I would say is lacking in our institutions of education, you know, like from elementary school, middle school, high school, to universities, is history. There is a historical illiteracy that is very rampant, where, you know, like something as basic as knowing that Israel was created in 1948. A lot of people don't know. Mika.
Even the backstory to that. Sorry,
the thing is, you know, we cannot really blame it, because even if we look at our own local history in Kenya, our own local history in Kenya actually does teachers in glorifying the home guards who worked with
the British,
more with the British, yes. Yeah. And then the history that they only teach us about one group of people who fought for independence and claimed they fought for the whole country while people fighting for the whole land. All in all, history is, or rather education is controlled by the person who's in power, and the curriculum and how they want to write it, they will write it how we don't tell our own African stories they want them to tell them.
Well, that
now,
was
if
true.
you look at the story of Israel, the state, this one, which has been created right now. And as you rightly say, they were looking at a point: where are we going to settle all these people who are coming from Auschwitz? Where are we going to relocate them? Where are we going to move them? We need to take somewhere. And Kenya was considered as part of it, but then at that particular moment, that was part of where there was a lot of resistance from the locals, and the locals were not getting into it. So bringing another bunch of people to settle in, it meant that there was land which was supposed to be created. That land meant that locals had to go. At that particular time, they were having a lot of resistance from both, and the region they were considering, from both the Mumias, what is the name of this other guy? The Kalenjin, the Koitalel, from Nabongo, Koitalel, and even part of the Baganda kingdoms were fighting the settlers at that particular moment. So they had to rethink it. And where did they go to? They went to. It actually was so good that there was a book already that was written and was saying that these people belong to a certain area. This is their land that they were given by God. And so it was easy for them to go and settle in Palestine at that particular moment, which was a British colony. And what is the best way of making that history continue? It's already in the Bible, as Annette said, a book that is more than how many, 2,000 years old? It was already in the Bible. So it was easy to just continue the narrative that this was Israel. And we took people from Auschwitz and brought them back home where they belong, which is Israel. Because a lot of people have actually thought that it's the Palestinians who are settlers in that area. They're the people who are brought in. Most people assume that Israel was there. It was the home for the Jews as they are, as they're called now, the Israelis. It was home for the Israelis. And the Palestinians were the people who were from the neighboring Arab nations, are the ones who came in. And who because they were moved to settlements at that time by the British to allow the Jews who were coming from different areas now called the Israelites to be moved in there.